Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It's my first video on the channel. I'm going to start it off with a guide. I had somebody in my Twitch chat ask me how I got my games to run on my computer. They're new to emulation. They're new to retro gaming, even, which is cool. I'm glad I can make new people interested in old games. You know, it's a passion of mine. I have a cool setup, which I'll show you. This is a program called Retroarch, and it allows you to have all your different consoles in one program, which is really convenient. I'll show you. If I scroll over, I have arcade, I got Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64, NES, Super Nintendo, and then all the games going down, right? It even has box arts you can load in, and actually kind of cool because it might make you want to play a certain game you never thought to play before. So anyways, this is the setup. They wanted to know how to get this set up, and it's not the easiest question to answer. It's a little bit complicated. When you first install Retroarch, you're given absolutely nothing. You have no emulators and you have no games in there. So I'm going to build a complete fresh build of Retroarch, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get running from nothing. And we're not going to get into exactly how to customize the look of the menu and stuff like that. We'll do that in another video, but to get you up and running, I'll show you right now how to do that. By the way, I do stream on Twitch, so if there is anything that you want me to go over, you have any questions about, you know, emulators, go ahead and shameless plug right there. You can get me ftg_bro at twitch.tv. All right, let's get into it. Okay, congratulations, you've installed Retroarch. The first thing we need to go over is the controls. If you're using a keyboard, the arrow keys will move you around. I believe it is enter to go into menu, and it will be backspace to go back out of the menu. Escape will just straight up close the program, so don't hit escape. I think for me, hitting escape is like my default go-to to go back a menu, just like in my brain, but you gotta remember, just use backspace to go back. You can also use the mouse, and left click will go into the menu, right click will go back. Okay, so the first thing to do on Retroarch is to go and install the actual cores. Retroarch works as a catalog of multiple emulators. So think of it as one program that you can install many different emulators into. That way it kind of acts as a library for all of your games and all of your consoles. The emulators are called cores. So we're going to install our cores first by going to main menu, load core. When you go into load core, you're not going to see these ones I have. I kind of pre-installed those before the video. You're actually going to go to download a core. And when you go to download a core, the program actually loads up a full list of all the available emulators in here. You'll see it in alphabetical order by console name, starting with arcade on A. You're going to scroll all the way down. And yeah, let's just do a Game Boy one for now. So I'll select Nintendo Game Boy. You'll see they got 3DS. If you scroll down further, they got NES, stuff like that. The reason you see multiple Game Boys is because there's actually different emulator cores. You might want to download more than one because some ROMs are not compatible with some emulators for whatever reason. Anyways, we're just going to pick this one, and you'll see at the bottom core installed within seconds, pretty quick. You can go and install whatever game consoles you want, like Game Boy Advance. I think Game Boy Advance kicks ass. Next. Cool. Install. Back. So to bring in our games, the first thing we're going to do is click import content. And when you're in import content, you're going to want to think of a directory. A directory is like a folder on your computer. And I would suggest put all your games for each console in a console specific folder. That way, when you scan directory, you can go to your N64 directory, scan the directory, and it's just going to load up an N64 playlist. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go to scan directory. Mine's in C drive. You can put the games wherever you download them. Just be organized, right? So here's my folder. It's called games. And you can see here, I have N64, Sega Genesis, SNES. These are just folders on my computer I made manually. N64. Okay, now here is where it gets a little bit weird. I'm gonna go to my N64 folder, and you can see Europe and Japanese are subfolders in here, and then you don't see the games. So that's gonna be something to watch out for. Just click scan this directory. You'll see at the bottom that it's starting to load all the games. It'll start to like go through every game. If you have like a crap ton of games, it could take a little while, but cool. So now we've scanned the directory. We're gonna go back all the way. And you'll see at the bottom, we have Nintendo 64. And it loaded up my games twice because I have zips and I unzipped it. Probably not the best thing to do. If you just have a folder full of zips, just leave them as zips. It's smart enough to know that it's a zip file. So let me go back and we're gonna check the SNES folder. So you can see here, I just have one game, Battletoads and Double Dragon. It's a pretty good game. I suggest playing it if you haven't. Anyways, import content and scan directory. Same thing, C drive, games, Super Nintendo, and then just scan this directory. Okay, it looks like it's done. It says finished, going all the way back. Boom, Super Nintendo. Okay, cool. So the next section I want to talk about is the settings. The settings can be a little bit complicated at first glance. There is two menu items for settings. You got main menu and then you got settings. The settings menu is specifically global Retroarch settings. So the settings for Retroarch as a program, the main menu settings we'll talk about later. That's where you will go for your emulator settings. So let's say you want to tweak your Nintendo 64 to look better and run better, you're going to go to main menu settings. But if you want to tell Retroarch, hey, my PlayStation controller's plugged in, do you recognize it? Can you recognize it? Or you could tell Retroarch, hey, I want you to be in full screen mode, or I want to have a different skin for Retroarch, stuff like that. So first things first, we're going to go to regular settings and we're going to change video settings. Here, most of this you don't want to mess around with too much, but full screen mode and windowed mode are going to be your basic display settings and the first things you're going to want to mess with. Output will be things like your resolution and your monitor's refresh rate, stuff like that. Resolution being the most important one. You probably don't want to mess with refresh rate too much. Full screen mode. Here you can start in full screen mode. If you want to toggle between full screen and windowed mode, I believe it's just F on the keyboard. Yeah, just F. So at any point, if you end up starting in full screen and you want to go window, just press F on the keyboard. Cool. We're not going to get into any of this technical stuff right now. We're just going to go back, set full screen, set your resolution. Should be good. Input's a big one. We're going to go to input. And this is where you're going to set up your controllers, especially if you have multiple controllers. There is things like analog dead zone and sensitivity, which are important for like Nintendo 64. I find specifically GoldenEye, aiming is a bitch if you don't have the proper dead zone and sensitivity set. Port 1 controls. So yeah, you got to think of each USB controller you have as different ports. If you can imagine this USB controller plugging into a Nintendo 64, that would be port 1. If you imagine it plugging into a Super Nintendo, it would still be port 1. Super Nintendo only has 2 ports, right? So whatever's plugged into port 4 or I guess beyond would just not be recognized on a Super Nintendo unless you have a multi-tap, but that's a separate issue. So port 1 controls. First thing to check is device type. So it's going to be RetroPad. You're going to want RetroPad with analog. That way, if it's a controller that has an analog, it's going to use it. You're going to want to make sure analog to digital type is none, and you never want to turn that on. Because what that ends up doing is it maps like the control stick to be the D-pad, and you just don't want it. You'd rather just have a D-pad and have an analog stick. So device index is going to show your controller. It might say generic Xbox 360 controller, or it might say wireless controller. It kind of depends on what controller you're using on your PC. Mine just says disabled here because this is a virtual PC. There's no controller plugged into it. So ignore that for now. But you should see that it all maps to the actual console. And it will show you right and top button because A and X and B is different on every damn console that exists for whatever reason. So they should all map automatically and you shouldn't have to mess with any of this stuff. So as long as the main things to know here, RetroPad or RetroPad with analog, device index is the big one. This one here, just set to the controller that's plugged in. If you have multiple controllers, then choose which one you want to be player 1 and which one you want to be player 2. The last control that's 100% necessary, in my opinion, is under Hotkeys. And confirm quit. You're going to want to make sure this is turned on. It looks like it's turned on by default. In the past, it was not. So just go ahead and double check, because what this makes it do is hitting escape will not close Retroarch. You have to hit escape twice. A lot of the time when you're going through these menus, especially by keyboard, is you'll hit escape to go back up a level just naturally, because that's escape kind of goes back a menu in most other programs. Hitting escape accidentally is not going to close your program for you. So it says press again to quit. Perfect. We didn't accidentally close the program. That's perfect. You can go ahead and you can mess with any hotkey that you might like. Here's where you would change your save state hotkeys if that's what you want to do. I mean, the defaults are fine and it's perfectly playable in my opinion, but if you want to map it to a controller, that's up to you. By all means, you would do that here. Volume up, stuff like that. One thing I do use is the mute button. That's just because when I'm streaming, sometimes we want to play music and I can just press F9 and I mute the game. It's perfect. I don't need to minimize or do anything like that. Okay, I'm not going to get too much into customization for the program on this video, and I might make a different video on that later. But to get the cool crossbar menu that I have on my build, you go to settings and then drivers. And I just want to show you this because it is kind of hidden, in my opinion. It should be under user interface, but it's under drivers. So you go to drivers and then you're going to go down to menu. Ozone is the default menu you see with this gray background. We're going to click that. There's different styles, but XMB, cross media bar, I believe is what it stands for, but I could be wrong. Choose that. We're going to go back under main menu at the very bottom. We're just going to restart Retroarch. And this works the same as closing Retroarch with the X at the top, or quit Retroarch and then just reopening it, but restart Retroarch. Sometimes you'll need to do this if you're changing video settings, just because it just needs to reload everything from scratch, I guess. So now you can see, if I make it bigger, we got this cool menu. I feel like I should recommend working in the default Ozone while you're getting used to Retroarch, because these menu items you can see, even though they're exactly the same, we got quick menu and then we have settings, they're not labeled and it can be really confusing to learn on. So that's up to you. That's just how you'll go and you'll change it. It's in settings and then drivers. Go to menu and change it to XMB. I'm going to hop over to my main build so I can actually show you how the games run and then change the emulator settings. Okay, cool. So on my main build, you can see now how identical it is, even though it looks really different. We got our quick menu here. We got our settings menu, drivers, video, audio. Thankfully, on my main build, I have my controller. I can navigate with my controller. So we imported our playlist and now we can go to the actual games. I'm just going to load the first one here. We're going to go into it. We got a few options here. We can add it to favorites. If you like the game, why not? That's up to you. And then we can set core association. We shouldn't have to do this, but if you have multiple N64 cores, and let's say this game is buggy on Mupin and you want to try parallel, you can set the core association here. I'm going to go to run. It'll close briefly and it's going to reload the game with the N64. I got a bunch of pop-ups. I got achievements too I can show you guys, but I'll show you how to set that up in a different video. Very cool feature. And yeah, the game is loading. So now that we have a core loaded, we can go to our core settings. We're gonna go to the main menu. I use the PlayStation button on my controller. The Xbox button works as well, or you can press F1 on the keyboard. Pretty important hotkey. Circle or backspace, B, whatever, go back. And we are going to go all the way now to quick menu. You'll see there's a new menu item. Now that the core's loaded, instead of load core, you got quick menu. When you go to quick menu, it looks very similar to the settings menu, but I want to be very clear. This menu is specifically for this one core that we have loaded. Not just Nintendo 64, the individual Nintendo 64 core. When we go down, we're going to go to options, and then this is where you're going to mess around with your options. You might want to change things like the resolution factor. You might want to change the resolution, the plugins. This gets a little bit technical, and I want to make sure that you can mess up your core settings if you change the wrong setting. It could actually end up making your games crash every time you load it up. I will show you after this how to reset back to default in case you really mess it up. It happens. So anyways, I find resolution factor you'll see on multiple different cores, and that basically will make the game look a lot more modern, more upscaled, and less pixelated, and less blurry, right? So here you're going to want to also maybe change your anti-aliasing settings. So if you got a lot of jagged edges in your game, I have mine cranked. I just love the look of a clean, even though I know it's not maybe true to the original, I love the look of some clean polygons. It makes me very happy to see that and play like that. But anyways, those are your core settings there. Shaders are another section where you can actually change the way your games look. I'm not going to get into that this video. I'll make a customization video where we can go into the different shaders. You can make it look like it's on an old TV and cool stuff like that. Achievements are here. So you can see I have my achievements set up. I'm going to show you in a completely separate video from both this one and the customization one. The big one we're going to want to go to is controls. So in controls, you're going to see port 1 controls just like we did in the settings menu, but this isn't to interface into Retroarch. This is actually to configure the Nintendo 64 controller in this case. And you're going to see here, you can actually remap specific buttons. And this might be handy where an N64 controller is very different from a PlayStation 4 controller. I might want to make my Z button, like the Z on the Nintendo 64, not L1. I might want to make it L2, for example, right? Just because the L button is not used on Nintendo 64. I'm going to change my L2 to Z trigger, and I'm going to change my L1 to L shoulder. Just because I think, I also like, I just like pushing the triggers personally. That's just personal preference, guys. It's up to you. You don't have to do that. C buttons, it's going to by default map to your right analog stick, so you probably don't have to mess with that. Just to give you an idea, if you want to remap a controller, that's where you'll go. You can also close your content here. So if you want to close, I'm playing World Is Not Enough, and be like, oh, whoops. I meant to play an actual good game, like GoldenEye. So I'm going to scroll down. Oh, by the way, R1 will cycle between letters. You can go F, G, H, stuff like that. But yeah, the last setting I want to go over before I close out is that panic button I was talking about earlier. If you mess up your settings and you can't load your games anymore, it's going to be really important to be able to revert back to it, because sometimes you can change a setting and the program just straight up closes as soon as you open it, and that's not a good situation to be in. So there's two ways we can do it. The first way is directly in Retroarch. If you can open up the program before you load games or anything, you can actually go to the quick menu, scroll down to configuration file. Here, you're going to be able to reset to defaults, and this will actually just revert all your settings back. I believe it'll keep your playlist, but anything to do with core settings or controller settings will have to be redone from scratch. So it sucks to have to be able to do that, but sometimes it's a necessary evil. You can also save your configurations here as well. And that way, if you get all your settings working and everything's good, you can save it and revert to that. Okay, in the worst case scenario where RetroArch is just completely not working for you, you're going to have to go to your installation directory, and that would be where you installed it when you first downloaded it and ran the installer. If you don't remember where that is, you can go to your settings, and then all the way at the very, very bottom, there's directory, and it'll show you the general folder structure where it's installed to. So once you get into your RetroArch folder, you're going to want to scroll down. Yours might look different from mine. I probably have a bit more files than there would be on a clean installation. But you're going to want to scroll down, and you're going to look for a couple files here. You got retroarch.cfg, retroarch.default.cfg, and retroarch core options. So you can delete them, but I would not recommend it. I think a safer approach would be to create a new folder, and I would call it config backup, or you can call it whatever you want, new folder, whatever. Go ahead, and I use control and click all three of them. I'm going to cut and then paste into config backup. Now, when I open up RetroArch, this is my main build, and by just moving those three files, you can see that it's already reverted right back to the Ozone template that we saw when we first installed the program. So just by moving those files, it will most likely fix or at least erase that setting that was changed that broke RetroArch for you completely. I know it would suck to have to do this, but you know, it's better than not being able to play anything at all, right? So I just want to show you guys that because that is a situation I put myself in, and it sucks to have to figure that out without knowing where to go or how to even go back to default in the program, let alone in your files, right? So hopefully that will help you in case of an emergency. And quickly to show you how to recover these files. So the reason I didn't delete it was because now I can cut them back into the main RetroArch folder. I'm going to replace the files. Every time you open and close RetroArch, it's going to create those settings files if they're missing. So I want to write them over because I know those are good. And then when I launch RetroArch again, boom, it's back to where it was. So, okay, cool. So hopefully that explains how to get you up and running in RetroArch. And I wanted to explain some of the menus that I found confusing. I definitely did not go over everything, and there's going to be a lot that I didn't cover that maybe you feel I should have. Definitely let me know. I'm going to respond to comments. I have a Twitch channel if you want to come talk to me directly and ask any questions about this. I have a Discord, mostly memes. Honestly, guys, it's not like a super serious channel. Like, we just like to have fun, but by all means, come in and ask questions and just hang out and we can play games or whatever. So let me know. I'll catch you guys next time. We'll go over some customizations. I'm going to have some gameplay videos. I have a lot planned for this YouTube channel. So I know it's kind of weird asking you to subscribe with a single video up, but there's going to be more content to come. So if you want to find out more about RetroArch, see some of the achievement hunting, go through some different games and hidden gems, stuff that I got planned, hit the subscribe button or just join me on Twitch, man. That's where I am most of the time. So I will catch you guys next time. Take it easy.